Okay, hey everybody, welcome to the UGASports Live Podcast. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Jim Donnan and Jake Reuse. Jake Reuse is our recruiting savant at UGASports.com. Jim Donnan is the former head coach of the University of Georgia Bulldogs. I am the guy who sits on the end and does commercials.
I think it's fair to call Jim Donnan a savant as well. Offensive savant.
Servant.
Well, like I pointed out before, and he always rolls his eyes and wants me to go past it, but he is the only coach that I know of in Division I football to have led the college football in in passing offense and rushing offense. So he can do either style. He can switch it up on you. You go one way, he'll flip it on you. So that's why when we do our watch-along shows, which we will be doing again, attention sponsors, this fall when we do the watch-along shows, you need to tune in because there is nothing like watching Coach Donnan call the plays before they happen, or at least what they should call. And then he's like, "Oh, they're gonna run here. It's not gonna work." And sure enough, they run. It doesn't work. And it is a joy to do the watch-alongs because you learn so much more about football than you would ever have known before. So anyway, this is our normal weekly podcast. I'm sorry we couldn't do it last week. I had an issue in the family that I had to take care of, and the guys here did a fantastic job of letting me duck out, so I appreciate that. Shout out to our sponsors, of course, Athens Ford. Go by there, pick up your new F-150. Aaron Overhead Doors, sponsor of the website and the podcast. Of course, Academia Brewing Company, great place to eat. Your Pie, 70-plus locations. And, of course, we are in Champions right now. When you get a chance, you're in town, you want to come to one of the basketball games or baseball games that are being played, swing by Champions on Baxter and enjoy it.
5th anniversary party this weekend. Low Country Boil on tap. So get out here Friday and Saturday for that. They'll be celebrating all weekend.
Yep, and, of course,
you're already to number 5, eh?
Yeah, not bad.
If you're watching the show on YouTube, go ahead and, if you would, subscribe to our YouTube page. If you are watching it on Facebook, give a shout-out to our friends at 365 Game Day. That means a lot that they let us on their page, so we have a much greater reach. A lot to talk about. 2 weeks ago, we didn't get to mention last week that you were in Miami talking to a lot of the top players down there. This past Sunday, I was in Orlando talking to a lot of the top players there. I'm assuming it was this way for you too, but I talked to 19 kids. Every one of them raved about Georgia. And Coach Donnan always says the brand is strong. And in all my years of covering recruiting, I don't know that I've ever been to a Florida camp, Orlando, Tampa, Miami, where guys were just like, oh, Georgia. They talked about Georgia in the same, I don't say hushed tones, but the same reverence that they talk about Alabama. Talk about Ohio State. Talk about Clemson. Just whoever was hot at the time. I remember back when getting a Texas offer meant anything. Or being USC. Remember when USC was red hot? Like, and I want that USC offer. Now it's like guys like, I don't have that Georgia offer, but I really want one. And their eyes would get big. A couple guys talked about crying when they got their Georgia offer. I'm just saying, Coach, you said this before. The brand is strong, and right now, we've got evidence of it. We got 19 updates on the board right now where kids just raving about. And again, these are top 100 kids. These aren't like scrubs. This is the best of the best.
I think it's a combination of the success rate that Georgia's had with Florida players presently on our squad. They're doing a good job of promoting Kirby and the staff and the atmosphere here and the development that they've had to help them, hopefully go to the league. And the fact that one of the things you always do is look at the programs around the country that are, kind of not doing that well, and you go into those areas hard. So Miami has been floundering here for a couple years.
True.
Florida State just made a big coaching change, the second one in 4 years. And regardless of any success that Mullen has had, they still have had a very difficult time head-to-head with us, mano on kids, except the ones that have transferred there. So I think a combination of our success, the lack of success of those teams in Florida, because you're always looking to where, for instance, when I came here, a lot of these kids didn't know about even Herschel Walker in 1996, 97. You're trying to sell that.
Point.
But now these kids are seeing, like you mentioned, the name brand blue blood teams now are Alabama, Clemson for the most playoffs, and then we're right up there in the process too of getting in there. And then Oklahoma, has been there 3 straight years, so it's kind of a deal. You walk down the hall and say, "Hey, I got a girl say, hey, I just got a new purse," and a kid says, "Hey, I just got an offer from Georgia." So it's a big deal. It gets their attention.
No, you mentioned that, and I think it's really true. One of the things that's changed that a lot, and you hear it from kids, is like they get online and they're searching, greatest running backs of all time, greatest wide receivers of all time, and kids are watching Herschel Walker, they're watching Todd Gurley, they're watching A.J. Green clips. They're seeing all the history there, plus they're seeing Georgia win on that big national stage, and so the combination of both really strong. You mentioned Orlando, 19 kids. I think I talked to 15, 13, something like that down in Miami.
I'm doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, right. Ask him who typed up all those updates yesterday. It is.
Do a good job of transcribing.
It's very, very strong right now. I think that what you hear consistently, too, even from top players in the nation, is they say, man, I'd really love to see Georgia pick it up. It's not even a situation of like, I hadn't heard from them in a while, so forget them. They're like, hey, I really hope they call me again.
No, that's a great point, because I had 2 top 100 players, Bryce Langston and another one, I can't remember. I said, they're coming to visit Georgia. I said, what do you want to see from Georgia? He goes, I want to see that they are as high on me as I am on them. I want to see where I'm at on their board, and Georgia's looking for a new director of player personnel, and we have a few updates on that on the UGASports.com. There's adjustments going on, but the coaches are out on the road there now. February is kind of a dead period, so it's going to be a little calmer.
That's a new development.
A new development.
Thank God.
I spoke to one person within the program. He said, this is the greatest thing that's happened in 5 years.
I believe it.
But they go year round, so they have a slow period. And even during the dead period, they're still talking to players. But 2 of these top 100 guys said, the number one thing they want to see when they get to Georgia is where they're at on the board, because Georgia is a real possibility for them. 2 kids that could pull out of Florida as long as they feel that Georgia is as high on them as they are on Georgia. And that is not what we're used to hearing when you talk to a kid who could be arrogant, because he's like, look, I got kids
30 offers, 40
offers, absolutely.
Yeah, I think if everybody just goes back to the early signing period, which really has necessitated a different style of recruiting early on, earlier visits, earlier official visits, earlier home visits, whatever it might be. But what it does, because the calendar year still presents 30, maybe 25 days in January, where the coaches can really pretty much hone in on juniors and sophomores. So that's where you see that Kirby copter going everywhere. That's where you see Dale McGee going all over the country to these different running backs, all the coaches going into different areas. And now you're way ahead going into these camps, because the coach has already been to their school, as compared to going to the school after the camps in April and May for spring recruiting. So from that standpoint, I think even I can figure that out. I don't know if Radi can, but that's what happens with those kids. There's earlier contact, and that's why plus there's a lot more pressure on them to, maybe get it down a little bit, because there's so many of these schools say, hey, please come to our spring game. Please come to our
junior days,
come to our camp and all, whereas others are saying, look, we might be able to get you to come to the spring game. We might be able, depending on, and there's a lot of difference in that. So I think we're sitting pretty as far as, and the overwhelming thing, though, that I think, and I'll stop talking about this part, is you don't luck into being number 1 or number 2 in the country 3 years in a row. You might just be a real find out and get some guys at the end that you didn't expect to and be number 1. But to be number 1 or 2, 3 straight years, that's not luck.
Absolutely.
I mean, and these kids are looking at, there must be a reason why these guys are going there, So you got the history part of what they've seen the last couple of years. Hey, boy, if I could be in part of that, I know they got a lot of good players there, And to me, that's what the difference was with the kid from Florida State coming here as a tight end, and the kid from Wake Forest. The supporting cast goes, and not only where you want to go, but who you're playing with and who's going to be playing with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Trey McKitty, Jamie Newman, those guys are – if you're looking at what you're surrounded by at Wake Forest, you're like – and he was successful at Wake Forest, but he didn't have that offensive line that you're going to have at Georgia. He didn't have the running backs that he had at Georgia. Trey McKitty's like, I had to bail out my offense a lot.
He's been through a few quarterbacks in his tenure.
And he's like, yeah, I want to go try that real quick. But to your point about, being those number one classes, we, in recruiting, and Jake can attest this more than anybody else, when you have a situation where you get that big number one class, lots of times you drop because a lot of kids are like, well, you're already full with great players. I don't know if I want to go there. I'd rather go somewhere else. But to do it back to back to back is insane. And even with this 2021 class, if I'm an opposing coach, if I'm at Tennessee, Clemson, Florida State, I'm like, look, kid, Georgia just signed 3 number one classes. You think you're going to make it in on that depth chart?
Sure.
Come here. We got immediate playing time for you.
Hey, don't tell me that, Coach. You were 63 and 62 the last 10 years.
Exactly. But
Did you know that you know that that's Tennessee's record in the last 10 years?
I did not.
I just had to say that.
Wow.
Phil Fulmer says they're back.
They are back.
I mean,
Back of the pack.
I mean, seriously, if you'd have said at the start of the year 2000 that Tennessee over the not even that year they were bad, that decade, but this last decade, 63 and 62. Wow.
Hey, they're above 500.
They're coming back.
They are.
They are. They're coming back a little bit. I worry about them a little bit more than I do Florida because Jeremy knows the Bama footprint. And
great evaluator, too.
Yeah, it worries me a little bit.
And he surrounded himself with some strong coaches. And to me, your coaching staff is good. But the point I was saying about the kids that would be scared of, say, if you're looking at Georgia with 3 number one classes and you're looking at Tennessee and thinking, well, I can get on the field quicker at Tennessee. I asked a bunch of kids. Maybe. I asked the kids, well, tell me about your interest in Georgia. And they said, well, I'm also looking at the NFL. Georgia develops players. We're talking to Micah Morris, top 100 player, had a fabulous camp Sunday, throwing guys around, throwing other Georgia targets around. So this is a guy who you definitely want. And I'm like, they've signed some good offensive line classes. What's your interest in Georgia? He goes, they're putting 3 guys in the NFL on the first round probably. 3 offensive linemen. I'm like,
it's going to be, it's going to be a banner year in the draft, so it's only going to get better.
Right. And we talked to a kid who's, one of the Hall. How do you say his name? Ajayi Hall. Talking to him, he's like, yeah, they mentioned Mecole Hardman. A guy who left 3 years, has a Super Bowl title, a Super Bowl ring now. They are not only looking at Georgia's recent history, but they're looking at the development. And I know a lot of opposing coaches and opposing fan bases bang on Kirby Smart. Oh, he's a great recruiter, but he can't develop. When you have those kids coming to Georgia and getting better and then going to the league, that means that number one class is not scaring off the kids that are coming up because they're like, they got it going on over there. So
you see that it's equitable opportunity. I mean, and you mentioned development. Look at a guy like Tate Crowder, comes in 2-star running back and essentially plays super meaningful minutes for the last 2 years. Does a great job under Kirby Smart. They get it. They flip him over, decide to make that move. I think that was huge for them. But I want to mention, too, you mentioned the coaches and the role they're playing in this. There was a lot of concern, and I even expressed, how will Georgia do in South Florida now that James Coley has moved on? The feeling I got down there at that camp was that now they've taken these kids and they're the recruiters now. They've sort of filled that void in for him. You've got James Cook. You've got Tyreek Stevenson. Yep. You've got a number of guys Devod Wilson, who are able to attest to what's going on in this program, and that is ringing as true. They know that those kids are going to be more honest with them than a coach would.
It's a little bit of a setback just because of the natural tie with the high school coaches and all that. But, I mean, sure, if it would have happened like the first year, then it would have been – when you don't have any players here, you make that point. And another point that I would make, too, is the competition level is something people talk about, the number one rankings and all that. But because of the guys coming out early, like you mentioned, possibly 4 first rounds, depending on what happens with Jake. But, that increases your chances of playing here earlier because – it's not like a 4-year deal where players are hanging in there that long. You know what I mean? So now they're I know I can't get your attention.
I'm sorry.
Were you saying something, Coach?
Something beautiful is going on here.
Something player,
but I'm just
blah,
saying,
blah, blah. There's food here.
It's just easier to come in and play, even in the better teams, like what you're saying with Clemson last year. Their ranking was right up there with us down to the last, and I would have to say their top 15 players were remarkable what they got. But, they had so many kids come in at semester that are already there. The quarterback, sure. Breesy, Simpson, all those guys are already there practicing. We've got 6 guys here, 6 or 7. How many we got?
6, I think. Yeah.
But it's just but we need to start talking about some other things, though. I mean, our recruiting looks good. I mean, if we could this is a wasted show talking about how good our recruiting is because everybody knows that. So let's talk about some other things like.
Well, I do want to take one more question on it because I thought this was a really good one. I want to find out who asked it, though. It was over on our board, and it was JR Scar 86. He says, "Who was the most impressive Bulldog target you saw in Orlando?" I'll give you mine from Miami, but go ahead.
Micah Morris, of course, is fantastic, and Hall was very impressive.
Morris is a guard, though, for sure. He's a guard.
I think so,
and
sure.
Mims is a tackle, right?
He did not do well at guard because they put him at guard his first couple reps, and he did not do well.
But that's where we're going to play.
When I asked him, he's like, I don't know how to play guard.
Well, he'll learn.
But they put him out of tackle, and he was throwing guys around. But Bryce Langston
looks good.
He looks good. Raw. Absolutely raw. That kid needs to learn some techniques. But if you're looking for, I've got everything in place, to blow up. Bryce Langston, keep an eye on that guy because he's really tough to get a hold of. We have a good story coming with him. He was one of the guys like, look, I just want to see where Georgia has me on their board if it's high. Oh, and Dakota Mitchell. I want to tell you all, there's a kid down there talking to Dakota Mitchell, wide receiver. He wears a picture of his mother in a locket, an open locket on his chest. And he's like, I'm a mama's boy. I cannot get away from her. If you ever want to know a key to where a kid's going to go or, who's pulling the strings, if you get Dakota Mitchell's mom on your side, you are going to get that kid.
Now, the good news was – no, I'm sorry. That was Charles Montgomery's mother who was like, yeah, I'd move to Georgia. Yeah. So, yeah, you've got that going for you. I would say, if looking at Miami, Tyreek Sapp was a guy who jumped out at me, 5-star guy, no surprise there, but one of those guys that you see him walk up and you're like,
do we have a shot? He's committed to Florida, right?
Yeah, he said, hey, I'm still listening to everybody. He said, he said, last time I got to visit Georgia, I didn't get to talk to Kirby Smart. Want to do that this time. I really think that could play in there. And then Troy Stellato, the wide receiver out of Cardinal Gibbons, I thought he was fantastic at that camp. Really quick, great hands, just kind of a do-it-all guy. James Williams didn't play, but he was there and looked really impressive. So, deep camps on both ends for sure.
Hip questions.
All right. Yeah, we got a bunch today. Some people already asking about Greg McGarity. And the report that his house is up for sale. A lot of questions surrounding that. One guy wanted us to open the show with that. I know people are excited to talk about it. Radi, what are you hearing on that?
We put it out there that his house is for sale, and sure enough, it is his house. We checked the listing. It is, he owns it, and so
I got a 2:30 viewing.
There you go. And you too can get a viewing if you have $855,000 laying around for a 6,000 square foot house.
I'm just doing it for investigative purposes.
And then we had some people reach out and say, well, no, he's just downsizing, which I can understand. It's a big house. That's a lot of rooms, that thing. It takes forever to go through the photo gallery. But I don't think that's it. I talked to some people inside the Athletic Association, and Georgia will be looking for a new athletic director in not too long. I think his contract runs through summer, and I don't think it is going to be renewed or extended. And I think Georgia will be looking for a new AD. I know everyone's like, well, then the next question is who? I don't know. I know who I would like and who I would, but, again, that's.
Based on Moorhead's MO and everything, he's going to look hard at Josh Brooks, I think, just because of the things are going pretty well as far as the infrastructure of our university athletic association, the way we're raising money. One of our best viewers comes over here once in a while. John Parker told me after the show 2 weeks ago that Georgia has raised more money for athletics than any school in the country the last 3 years.
Wow.
Now, that's pretty impressive. And you look at what we've been able to build and fund, but that's just still unbelievable considering where they were. So I think there's a lot to be said about these people that are working in those areas. And then,
shout out to the development office.
Right. And then, of course, Josh Brooks is involved in the the facilities like that. And I think you just got to me, who does Kirby want?
I was going to ask you that because it normally goes the other way. You think when you get a new AD, he wants to bring his guys in. With the success that Kirby's had and what he's done here, does he get some consultation on this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just
but we don't see that everywhere else.
And it's not bagging because we've had a lot of sports do really well over the years, but, our Directors' Cup stuff the last couple of years hadn't been anywhere near what it used to be. So I think you're gonna look at a lot of input from the stronger program. I would just think Kirby has a lot to say about it because, he's got to be able to work with the guy, and it'll be a real soap opera.
Yeah.
Just because there'll be a lot of rumors and Greg's done a lot of good things. There's no question about it, and he deserves it if he wants to retire. I think for sure that he could come back based on what Moorhead has said several times. It's a year-to-year deal, but the guy's 65 years old, and maybe he's got a house somewhere else or, summer home or something. Who knows? But it's not right to make conjecture about something like this unless – we got somebody like Radi sniffing out these things on Zillow. One of the things everybody needs to know around here.
We watch
this
planes.
Guy doesn't even.
We watch planes. We watch real estate sites.
He doesn't even breathe. He's watching the Zillow to see who's for sale, and he picks up that McGarity's house is for sale, and now all these other sites are saying, "Wow."
He sneaks in Champies at night and goes through the receipts to see what they're eating.
But I do give you credit for that, and I figured you'd probably have a Dash asking him about it. Did he ask him today?
Dash has not yet, but he will definitely reach out to him. Dash and Greg. As many people bang on Greg McGarity, you're always going to have people who rip on the athletic director and the offensive coordinator. It's a guaranteed thing in athletics. Thankless job. But I want to give. I sometimes rip on Coach Smart for not giving us enough access, and he knows it's a slippery slope.
Sometimes,
whatever he gives us is never enough. I'm always going to push for more. But Greg McGarity in his tenure has always answered the phone for a journalist, and he's always made himself available. And I know that if Dash calls him, day or night, 2:00 in the morning, Greg McGarity's going to answer the phone, and the responsiveness that he's had has been fantastic, so I always appreciate that. You mentioned Josh Brooks.
He's done a lot of good things, too.
Yes, he has. I mean, he's done a lot. And you look at the new facility that's being built. We broke the news on the new construction there.
Think of where things were.
Zone.
Think of things where things were. I mean, Kirby Smart obviously played a hand in this.
Who hired Kirby?
Exactly. So, I mean
but that thing that everybody needs to realize, too. It's like, I heard this guy say one time, I'll never forget it, about an athletic director. We sent you to hire the guy, not to offer him the job. There's a lot of difference between closing the deal, and that's what he was able to do. I mean, and Kirby was in much demand then, so a lot of credit goes there.
So too is like, you mentioned Josh Brooks, and there'll be another names pop up. Josh would be my leading candidate simply because he knows everything that Georgia's doing, has been the spearhead on all this stuff, gets it. He absolutely gets it. He's like, you got to spend money to make money. Going back before the Greg McGarity years, I remember sitting down with one of the senior ADs. We had lunch, and this is like the number 2 guy over there, and he was raving about how profitable Georgia was. It's like, we're the second most profitable school in the country behind Texas. I'm like, great, but that's not your job. Your job's not to make money. Your job is to win championships.
Sure.
And I'm like, that you don't get a trophy for being profitable. It doesn't give you a women's tennis trophy. It doesn't give you new facilities over there. It doesn't pick up the baseball program. But you look at we have new facilities of baseball. There's new facilities. The track was redone. There's new facilities for tennis. The 2 new facilities. You got the indoor facility that had never happened. Now you've got the giant construction going on, the West End Zone project. I'm like, Josh Brooks and those guys.
Strong in equestrian, too, man.
Yeah. So those guys
got to have the horses.
Cut the camera. Show's over. We're going to do those puns.
I mean, we are strong in equestrian.
They are. But to the point is that it is a big deal if you're bringing in a new guy. But I guess the bottom line is on this, I wouldn't change horses in the middle of the stream.
I get that.
You know, keep somebody who knows what's going on. But bring in somebody who can get it done. Josh can do that. But at the same time, you're also the University of Georgia. You would not surprise me to see
you're going to probably get some calls on it.
From some of the best ADs in the nation.
Ronnie Brown wants to know, he says, Coach, in your opinion, how important is that relationship between the head football coach and the AD?
It's the most important thing that you can have. I mean, it's like in any situation, who's your boss? I mean, can you – whatever the guy tells you, you got to be able to believe. And, I've been fortunate to have some really good athletic directors that I worked with as a head coach and an assistant coach because and typically guys that have been around football are a little bit easier because they know what you go through on a day-to-day basis. But it's paramount that occasionally – I'm sure Greg has had to say no to Kirby about some things, but I don't know about a lot of them. But, you look at our spending, whatever it might be, recruiting, travel, whatever, we're doing what we got to do and it's paying dividends. And I know I said on this last show I talked about Nick Saban's first few years and Dabo's first few years. Everybody, bags on us, hey, we're 44-12 and, all that. But I just think the future is very bright when you go over there and watch those kids lift weights, which I have a tendency to go do that once in a while, or watch those guys just run athletically, not in my lifetime have I ever seen a group of young men over there like that anywhere. I mean, when I was at Oklahoma, we had a lot of them, but not as many as these guys have. And Alabama, when I used to cover games, they had a lot of – but as far as just pure, thoroughbred – guys that are big, strong, and can run, scary.
You gotta love that term.
We mentioned this. We've been the last couple of years. We're like, this team is starting to look like others. And when Kirby took over, when you meet an offensive lineman, you think he's a fullback.
Yeah.
That tells you kind of where you are. So.
Well, I still go back to that Georgia-Alabama game in the rain. And what was that, 15?
It looked like a high school team playing
they walked out there and we were like, nah, man, it's going to be a long day.
Kirby's first year, when we went down to Ole Miss and we're looking at the
those wide receivers.
I thought they were all tight ends.
Yeah.
They were I'm like used to Georgia wide receivers. Then I'm looking at these monsters. I'm like, wait a minute, those are tight ends. Those are wide receivers. And what did they do? They threw all over Georgia.
Yep.
Georgia couldn't stop them.
Sure.
So it happens. A question for you from UG Alum 95 on Twitter. It says, Andrew Thomas was a consensus top 10 pick and the top offensive tackle in the draft. Now his stock is dropping to 5th off the board at 18th. They say he plays with his hands too low, poor technique and balance, and point to coaching. Thoughts from the coach?
You got all these gurus up there that if one person makes that assessment, then people read about it and worry. I think it hurts Andrew a little bit in the fact that he didn't play in a pure passing team as far as a team wanting you right away. We did a lot of RPOs, and he does have a tendency to get overextended a little bit because most of our plays were runs first, So if a guy does end up being a pass, it looks like he's doing poor technique on pass blocking. So, but he's going to be picked in the top 15, I would think, depending on which team needs it. It's just hard to take. I don't care who you are. It's hard to take a tackle in your top 5 picks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a big risk reward.
You're just not going to do that. And he, as far as the coaching, I think I would say that's poor on whoever said it. I mean, he got good coaching here from Coach Pittman, and he has tremendous knowledge of the game, and he's a great kid. And he'll be a tremendous ambassador for whoever he goes with as far as the community and people. When he goes in all those interviews and stuff, his stock will rise. But I think us as Georgia people seeing Andrew play as much as we did just have a tendency to think, hey, he's going to be top 5. Well, if they picked a tackle in the top 5, he probably would. But, he's going to be a first-round guy. Wilson might be. Kenley might be. But he's not he's got some issues just like anybody. But, I think it's overreacting to listen to one guy talk about him. But he's going to be graded very fiercely by these people because they're looking at a first-round draft choice.
You think that there's a little bit, over-analysis, I guess, going on? I mean, I think that tends to happen this time of year. You sit back and you watch all the tape rather than maybe just considering what that guy did, when what you saw with your own eyes. Now you're starting to go into the minutia of it, maybe a little bit of over-analysis.
Yeah, well, when I think about all the different people, Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, Daniel Jeremiah, all those guys, Bucky Brooks. I saw Bucky Brooks, Roddy might have tweeted out that he had DeAndre Swift rated as a top back in his top 5. And, maybe Mel Kiper might have him third. Each guy has a different way of rating people. It's like Siskel and Ebert on a movie compared to somebody else.
Great way of putting it.
Yeah. So you're going to have different varying views, but it's going to be the proofs in the pudding at the Combine, the Pro Day, which we will have here. I can tell you right now, we should have a big day over here at Champies and just tell all the coaches and general managers come over and Champies, and we'll entertain them because they're going to be stacked up and over there at the butt smear for that. We're going to have an unbelievable Pro Day when you look at 4 possible first rounders, adding Jake to that. Wow, and then it's just going to be, 5 if Swift. I meant to say Swift, so you got 3 offensive linemen. I don't know if Kenley will go in the first round, or Wilson, but I don't want to hem and haw about this, but I do feel like that the comparison type thing is hard to really go by. And the thing that I didn't have any idea about, which we had Brent Rollins working with us, and he does a great job on Pro Football Focus, on the grades and everything. These guys have these people under them rating these players and watching the tapes, and then they'll give them a combination of all the stuff. They can't watch all those guys 500 plays. They'll give them 50 plays to look at that they've already quelled, just like a recruiting guy will do over here to give Kirby on them, you know what I mean? So there's some really talented people working within the NFL Network and the ESPN to help them get ready for the draft where they can look at those guys.
Absolutely. I know you got more questions, but I want to jump on and let folks know that when you get a chance, swing by our friends out at Athens Ford. They are a big sponsor of the podcast as you're listening to or watching. They're also a big sponsor of our website. So
UGASports.com.
Oh, yeah, we need to mention that every once in a while. We never talk about the site. We talk about stories and stuff. But Athens Ford, big sponsor of UGASports.com. If you go to their website, you get a $500 coupon. They're going to pay you $500 that you can go out and use when you go buy a car. If you go by the website first, you can get the $500. You new or used, doesn't matter. They'll take care of you. Also, if you need to sell your car, you're like, hey, I don't need a new one. I just got to get rid of this one. You can turn your car into cash now. They'll give you a Kelley Blue Book Insta-Cash offer. It takes about a minute. You just do it right there online, find out what your car is worth. Good to know if you want to use as a trade-in. Of course, they have all these new offers, special offers on the certified pre-owned. So when you get a chance, swing by our friends at athensford.com. But before you go out there, like I said, just go to the website first, get the $500 coupon, and then go out there. Make your best deal and then drop that on them. This is the number one Ford certified pre-owned dealer in Georgia. So if you get what I bought, which was a certified pre-owned where they go through and do 100-plus inspection points on it, it feels like you're buying a new car. Hell, it even smells like a new car. So if you want a fantastic vehicle, all of their vehicles, the new ones, the Ford certified pre-owned, and any pre-owned vehicle that's not a Ford and that's under 80,000 miles will have a lifetime powertrain warranty on it. So no reason not to go out there. It's not like you walk up and there's some sketchy guy in the plaid coat coming up to you to sell you a used car. It really feels like you're walking over to a friend's house. There's zero pressure. They're not that kind of. You walk in and all the heads whip around like, hey, here's a new mark, and I've had that feeling at a car dealership before. But you walk in, it's the most low pressure thing you'll ever see in your life. Fantastic folks out there who take great care of you. So hit them up when you need a new or pre-owned vehicle. Check them out and let them know that the folks at UGASports sent you.
I think we've lost Coach for the day, but no. Joshua Hammonds over here on YouTube says, happy belated birthday, Roddy. It's also
thank you, sir.
Your Roddy's birthday. Sunday?
This past Sunday.
When I was working. When you were working.
Doing all the heavy lifting at UGAsports.com.
Yeah, how old?
38? 48.
Yeah. What was he?
Turned 48.
48 this year.
48 and out the gate.
There you go.
At a certain point, you start having to do the math.
Sure.
You forget. You're like, because I remember going, I'm 30. I'm 31. I'm 32. And then you get into your late 40s, you're like, okay, if I didn't carry the one.
I was born.
So.
Happy birthday, though, Bob.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, Cincinnati, Dog, touching on a big story that we broke overnight, and that's about Duan Mathis being cleared for spring practice. Duan, if you didn't see, Kirby shared that news with some supporters up in Charlotte. We've got further confirmation on that, too, so it's looking good.
This guy broke that down into the Sugar Bowl.
We've been talking about it for a while, for sure.
Yeah, what
did Kirby say something about it?
Kirby did. Kirby was talking to a group of supporters in Charlotte, and he told them this was the first public thing that quote unquote public. He didn't say it, in a situation where he was out on like a radio or something or mention it to the media. But this was the first time we heard Kirby Smart actually tell a group of boosters that, hey, he is cleared to play. So, yeah, we mentioned
he told you, and you put it out in Sugar Bowl.
No, he wasn't the one that told me that. No, I wish. If we could get Kirby to ever answer the phone.
Well, hey, I'm glad that it's public now. But, yeah. I mean, it was just a case of being really ultra safe. And wasn't any sense of trying to – but the guy got an inordinate amount of heavy lifting work out there where they just didn't hit him. I mean, he threw 707. He ran a scout team quarterback. I mean, he had a tremendous year developing and really – is going to be better physically, but from the standpoint he wasn't hit at all for a whole year.
So, and he won't be hit in the spring, of course. You don't let your quarterbacks get popped.
Right, unless sometimes the guy hits you. But hey, I overreacted there. I just thought that was old news. Come on, man.
Well,
read UGASports.
Part of it too, I think you mentioned. One of the things that Duan was, I guess, not concerning about Duan, but that people had questions about him coming in was: is this guy a quarterback? Is he actually a quarterback, or is he an athlete, a wide receiver, a guy who's there was some feeling that maybe he was a little raw at the quarterback spot.
He's definitely raw.
A whole year though to practice like that.
It was a lot of rawer 2 years ago, but he was a very good athlete. They moved to quarterback. The guy's got skill set to be a quarterback. With Coach, he's going to get good coaching here. I think Coach Munkin and Coach Faulkner put him through the grinder. I know I haven't talked to Munkin about him, but I know one of the first things that when I said something to Buster, he said, "Man, Mathis, impressive." Yeah. Which anybody would be impressed. The kid's big. He can run. We saw him in the spring game.
He can spin.
And, you got him and Beck and Bennett and of course, Jamie. Our quarterback room looks really good. Not to mention Priestley, who could play for a lot of teams.
That kid is overlooked a lot.
And I think we got a very competitive situation there.
Well, our Cincinnati Dog wants to know, now that Mathis is cleared, how do you see him kind of fitting into this quarterback battle?
I think he'll be right in the thick of it. I mean, for sure, it's going to take an overwhelming move by somebody beside Jamie to get the job just because of the experience he brings to the table. The guy is very powerful. I mean, you don't have any idea how good he looks on the hoof till you walk up to him. And he is and you watch him work out. I mean, I watch a little bit in the off-season program, not a lot, but the guy can, straight ahead speed. I don't think he's one of those guys that's, super elusive, but he's very powerful, and he can hurt you on his own read, and he got a good arm. But as far as Duan, he'll get everybody's attention when he starts running around out there throwing the rock because he's got a huge arm.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
what was it? Josh Helmholt that mentioned it.
Yep.
When Georgia swiped Duan Mathis away from Ohio State, he said one of our analysts said, "Look, he has a huge boomer bust factor. So this kid, he's raw." But if he puts it together, he is going to be up here. This kid has an amazing skill set, or he might struggle with it,
Track speed, too. I mean, you look at the track stuff he did in high school. Yeah. I mean, he's a lot like Fields as far as speed. Really got good speed.
So it's be fun to see it. And again, the news we had this morning was that Kirby Smart was telling people this he's cleared. Like I said, we had mentioned that that's what we had heard during the Sugar Bowl. Kirby had even mentioned publicly that he was running the scout team, but he said he's not quite cleared yet. So we knew it was coming. It's just good to know that going into spring, which is practice starts March 17th. So we're almost today's the 18th.
Yeah. 1
month from today, if you will, you have the first practices out there, and it's good to know that you're not going to have to. You never want to hit the quarterbacks in practice. But if some idiot comes through and does pop on them,
you got to feel a lot better than you did this time last year.
That's a good
Certainly.
point. Yeah.
Riser on the board with a good one here for Coach. He says, can you talk a little bit about hiring strength assistants for Scott Sinclair? He says, does he just get a blank check and instruction to get whoever he wants, or is Kirby a little bit more involved given how much time in the offseason strength and conditioning coaches spend with kids?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you got the blank check. I mean, whatever we need here, we're going to get. And we're not going to overpay, but we're not going to underpay. And we lost some good assistants there to Arkansas. Both these guys were really good. But we had a really good interview process, and we're able to get this one guy from North Carolina who Mac Brown told me, I know Mac because he used to play for me, and I figured it owed the UGA people for me to check out this guy. When I heard after Radi announced that he had been hired, again, you slap. but you were right. You were right on the guy. And I asked him, and he said the guy was, really had command of the weight room, and he had the ability to be a head strength coach. And, they just couldn't, it was just hard to match what Georgia went after for him. But said he's tremendous. So, and from all I've heard, everybody's been very impressed with him at this point. And then the guy from Texas Tech has some background here, having been at Furman and from Georgia, and I'm sure he'll fit in well too. So to answer the question, they've got to go through the interview process with Scott, and then he's going to take them to Kirby for final approval.
Makes sense. I mean, it's a very tight-knit community, because you have all the different certification levels amongst those strength guys, and they know each other. So,
big time.
So I guarantee you, if Scott could say, here's the next two guys.
He's got to roll it next.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
so how did you find out how did you know that both those guys are being hired before anybody else? I mean, it's not fair.
Well, same way we know that people have left. The same way we knew who replaced Haley Shafley.
All right, I'm just, but you did do it. I don't think people understand that. Stuff like that, but you did a good job on it. So what else we got?
One of the best things to do is when you're looking, you get a tip, and you go find their Facebook page, and they've already changed their stuff to UGA.
Yeah, that's a pretty good giveaway.
Pretty good chance that when it went from Texas Tech to Go Dogs, that yes, he's been hired by UGA. So.
Brent Dog 58 says, "You guys heard anything about Mel Tucker possibly coming after some UGA staff? I guess he started following. He started following Glenn Schumann on Twitter today. Not that it means anything, but some Michigan State fans are starting to start some rumors.
Well, I wouldn't blame him. You got to get somebody there to run your defense. I don't think he's going to be able to get Lanning. Who knows? But, I mean, don't say that, hey, Jim Donnan said he – I mean, could you blame him? He knows his defense. Georgia's number one defense in the country last year.
He's worked with the guy. He's
a co-defensive coordinator here.
Yeah.
So he's hired several guys from Michigan State. He kept Tressel, who was the coordinator. He's not going to be the coordinator, and he coaches the secondary. And he kept that Burton guy, who's a defensive line coach, who had gone to Indiana, but he came back this week. So I could see him going after some Georgia guys, but who knows? But, hey, I want to congratulate Mel for the job he did at Colorado, and it was a tough situation leaving there for, because he's so embedded with the players and everybody, but just lifetime contract time, you get that kind of not only money for him, but for assistance and commitment. And, any way you look at it, you're talking about the last 10 years, Michigan State's done a lot better than several teams in the Big Ten. That, you're talking about Penn State. It's come on lately, but Michigan State's a good job.
Yeah, it's a good job. It's a great program. They got a lot. They gave him a lot of money, and it's almost the exact same situation we saw with Sam Pittman. It's like, look, they made an offer. I can't refuse, They did that with Sam, and he's going to take it. So congrats to Mel Tucker. I saw that our Michigan State site pointed out on Saturday that Jay Johnson's going with him to coach his offense. So, again,
he's a terrific coach. He's got Minnesota offensive coordinator. He knows the Big Ten. It'll be a good move. But what exactly, as an old 75-year-old, when somebody follows you on Twitter, what does that mean? That like you got a seeing-eye dog walking around? What does follow? What does that mean? That you just, when something comes up about you on Twitter, it automatically goes to his phone?
No, it really doesn't even mean that. It's not even that deep. It's just like, I don't know.
So what does it mean? What's the connotation between Mel Tucker following Schumann that he would maybe talk to him about?
What I think is weird is that he wasn't already following Glenn Schumann.
Exactly.
That seems strange
Well,
to
then
me.
here's the thing. A lot of times when you see this.
Explain, por favor. Explain.
So we have a fantastic member on our board, Gager 292?
292, yep.
Gager 292, the guy who had the most accurate predictions of anybody in the nation last year when it came to the fan futurecast at UGASports, Rivals.com. You can predict where guys are going. A guy at UGASports beat out all the other fans on where guys were going, which means he reads a lot of sites. He keeps up with it. And lots of times he goes to our board and says, hey, Kirby Smart just followed this player. Or Coach Hartley just followed this guy, and all of a sudden, yeah, sure enough, 5 minutes later, that kid has an offer. So you can keep up with that because sometimes when you follow someone, it means you want to see what they're posting, but mainly, Coach, you want to be able to send them a direct message.
Okay.
You want to be able to write to them. But here's my thing. I'm like,
he probably got Glenn Schumann's phone number.
Thank you. I'm like,
if you
he
follow,
coached underneath
that
you
this
for
allows
years.
you to direct message him like you would on Facebook or something.
Yeah.
If
Right.
you're a friend on Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can't tell me that Glenn Schumann does not have Mel Tucker's number and vice versa. So if he needed to reach out to Glenn, he'd just like, hey, man, how's it going? You remember the 3 years we spent coaching together? So.
Hey, it's Mel. You remember me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Crystal Chrissy here with a very interesting suggestion. She says maybe Coach Donnan could be the new AD.
Hey, I'm like an old maid, man. I'm available.
Especially what they pay nowadays.
I would really do a good job with those minor sports, but I would be joining at the hip with Kirby. What do you want, Kirby?
Yeah.
Just hand him a checkbook.
I got a feeling Georgia tennis would see some increased spending.
No, I'd be very fair. But, I think it's certainly a lot different job than it used to be when football coaches became ADs, like Coach Dooley, Coach Broyles, all that. You just got so much more involvement with the Olympic sports, and you have a women's athletic director and all that stuff. So, Coach Fulmer's doing it, and certainly I wouldn't have the time to do it now, but I think it's a real important the way you represent the school, not only around here, but within the conference. The strength of Georgia should be prominent now, walking in the room compared to Alabama and Georgia should be the two got your attention schools on the football end of it for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna give you guys one to sit on before you move on this. Think about this though while we're doing this break. Jordan Green over on the board says if you could steal one current player from another team in the SEC to play for Georgia, who would it be? Think about that.
That's a good one. Before we get to that, I do want to give a big shout out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. Again, a sponsor of the website and the podcast. So if you enjoy the podcast and you're not a member of the website, thank Aaron Overhead Doors. If you're a member of the website and you're not hearing this, well, why not? You do, we're going to talk about you because you're not here. But no, if you like both, and you need to thank Aaron Overhead Doors because they make the podcast and the website run. Big shout out to them. Fantastic service, folks. I mean, again, I mention this all the time because I think it's rare in today's society when you reach out to a service provider, a plumber, a contractor, anything like that. You reach out to them, and they send somebody else. It's not somebody from their business. You go to Lowe's and say, hey, I need I need these windows put in. It's not somebody from Lowe's that comes out and does it. They have a contractor that you may never see again. Hell, half the time you can't even get that person's number if you have if you need a follow-up. You have to go back to Lowe's. They send out somebody different, I'm not banging on Lowe's. I'm just saying it's not their employees. But if you deal with Aaron Overhead Doors, that is somebody who comes out with the Aaron Overhead Doors logo on their shirt because that's where they work. Their 40 hours a week is at Aaron Overhead Doors. They do their training there. They work for it. They take pride in their work because they know that if something happens, someone's going to call Ryan Lucia and say, hey, Ryan, I need you to fix this. That same person is going to go out and take care of it. Now, if you look at their ratings, you know that that's not a problem. I mean, 5-star ratings across the board, 680 verified nearby now reviews, 4.96, which means one person gave them a 4, and 679 people gave them a 5, and so it's just the reviews speak for themselves. I also want to give a big shout out to our friends at Your Pie. Today's the 18th. March 14th is coming up, 314. What is
Pie
that?
Day.
Pie Day. That's when you can go out and get your pizzas at Your Pie for $3.14. I'm warning you a month ahead of time because
start setting up the tents.
Exactly. Yeah, the place gets packed, but you can't beat to get that full pizza for $3.14. It's a great deal. And they had a special I saw here in the Athens store. You can get a 7-inch pizza with all the stuff on it. A side order, like for me, it's going to be a salad because I'm trying to be svelte and everything, and a 20-ounce drink for $8.50.
Not bad.
Pizza, side, drink, $8.50. You can't beat that.
There you
go. Hit up any of the 70 Your Pie locations. They're going to take care of you. But remember, we're less than a month away from Pie Day on March 14th, 3.14. Pie for you people that don't know math. That's what it is. So big shout out to them.
And get out of Champions this weekend, February 21st and 22nd for their Low Country Boil for their anniversary.
Good.
Coach, who you taking? Who you stealing?
I mean, like Rafa Nadal said, if doesn't exist, but the guy that I wish we could have hit on was Max Johnson. I just feel like he's going to be a tremendous quarterback. I know Beck's going to be good. Vandergriff, going to be good. But I feel like Max Johnson's going to be a heck of a player.
You're going to take an incoming freshman. You can have anybody.
Well, I could take somebody on the lower.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to think about
All
that.
right. Roddy, you got somebody?
I'm trying to find a kicker.
A kicker? Well, that's okay. I can understand that. I'm going to go with Jamar Chase because he won the Bolitnikoff Award last year. And if
I'm going to go with a really productive wide receiver because Georgia needs wide receiver.
No, you pair him up with George Pickens.
Oh, man.
Give Jamie Newman that to start his career off. I'd love to see that.
That's
Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is
I'm changing your mind to Jamar Chase. You pick someone else.
Let's go.
Dave McMahon gets. He says, "I'll take Derek Stingley off of LSU." That's
Good corner.
That's a pretty good pick.
I don't know how much he could jump on our secondary though.
Ooh,
well, it's a good point. You got Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes.
You got Campbell, Stevenson, Stokes, and Daniels.
Yeah,
Cindy and
I'm not taking anything against Jake Camarda, or any of the kickers, but to me, or Zirkle coming in. But the production that you've had with Rodrigo Blankenship is huge. And to me, it's like...
Grow that grass, man.
You see... I don't even want to know what that's about.
No, I was talking about grow grass.
Yeah, I know you're talking about grass.
It fixes the fields.
Uh-huh, sure he does.
Fix the fields.
Sure.
But grow that grass.
Chuck Ward
I would have
says...
said smoke that grass.
Pass that grass.
Chuck Ward says Weidermeyer from the tight end from A&M, Jalen Weidermeyer. He was excellent. Very good player.
Absolutely.
Good player.
Kinlaw went to
he's in the draft. Yeah, so you can't have him.
Yeah.
I would have taken Joe Burrow then.
I was just saying that, man. I wasn't sure what year he was. I'm glad Georgia didn't have to face him again.
Yeah, right, right.
Let's get to here and now.
All right, let's see here. What else we got? Coach, do you see a possibility of Clay Webb taking over at center and Hill moving to guard? Somebody posted last week that Kinley said he thought that was going to happen. Do you see a possibility of that happening?
Kinley's doing the coaching now, eh?
I don't.
And somebody told me that he saw Kinley at somebody wrote about it. He saw Kinley at the airport, and he told him that. Clay Webb's got a lot of potential as a center, that's for sure. And Webb's a perfect center, and certainly he'll be a tremendous guard. I think it's just going to be a lot of mix and match in this spring, see what the best group's going to be. You got so many of our prominent young guys aren't going to be here, particularly the tackles. So you got to protect Hill, though. I mean, to me, he's the most, from my standpoint, invaluable guy coming back. He's a lot like some guys we've had in the past that can play all the positions. So you probably see him playing a lot of center, also Erickson center too. We played Erickson at guard, but the thing that's going to be so difficult for our offense this spring is going against our defense. And, it's going to be.
Do you think you're going to get a good sense of how good the offense can actually be?
Yeah, that's why I thought our offense was going to be so good last year, because I knew how good our defense was. But, I could factor in Holloman going down and Cager and all that. But I think going against our defense is going to really help our offense going into that first game against Virginia. And, as usual, Kirby thinking about the future. He was our staff was visiting with North Carolina here last week about Virginia, and Virginia and North Carolina is talking to us about Auburn. So Kirby doesn't miss a trick, and you can't find that stuff out on any other site that we're listening to.
I didn't know that. Well, that's nothing new. I'm usually
getting ready for Virginia.
You
man.
run the site.
No, just saying, I didn't know that.
That's good though that we're getting ready for them. I always like if somebody wants to come in and visit us, I'm really a little sensitive about that because I don't want to tell them anything. But if they got somebody that we're playing, then it's a little, you feel a little bit better about having them come in and talk to them.
Nice little trade-off there. I like
and it
that.
was kind of interesting the year that we played Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. Chaney and the staff actually went out and visited OU that spring, and then we ended up playing them.
You never know when that's going to come back to bite you in the tail. Going back to the Webb situation, I spoke to Webb after the Sugar Bowl and asked him, what about playing, you're going to play center? He didn't want to play center. I mean, he will. Sure. Absolutely, if he's told to, but he wants to play guard, and I think Hill is a great center, so Erickson could do it if need be, but to me, why would you move Hill when he's obviously done it? He spent a year there. He's got a future there. We saw Clay Webb as a great guard. Erickson played fantastic. I got his butt chewed a little bit in the game, but, for a guy who that's his first action of the year, really, you got two fantastic guards there. I don't see why upset the apple cart. I also want to give a shout-out real quick before we get to the last question of the show to Academia Brewing Company. I told everybody I went out there for the Super Bowl, had a fantastic meal, great beers. St. Patrick's Day is coming up, March 17th.
Good Lord.
About a month from now.
It is.
You're going to talk about a place to go and enjoy a great St. Patty's Day. Hit up Academia Brewing Company around noon, and it's going to be fantastic. Any other questions?
I think we're wrapping it up for today. I think we're good.
That's Jake's way of saying he doesn't like any of the other questions you guys offered him. No.
We got plenty, but I don't want to be unfair to anybody.
Yeah. Tune in next Tuesday at noon. We will be here. I'm trying to think. There's something else going on next week that I'm trying to keep. Oh, man. Anyway, somebody will be here next Tuesday at noon to do the show. I appreciate everybody giving us a pass last week. Couldn't quite be here, so sorry we didn't have a show last week, but we will definitely have them going forward. We didn't get a chance to talk about basketball.
Ooh. Probably for the best.
I can see how disappointed you are.
Yeah, we'll save that.
We've got baseball to talk about next week, and, of course, recruiting. More recruiting stories to check out at UGASports.com. And, of course, we'll have maybe, next week we might even have some coaching updates. Never know. Anyway, tune in next Tuesday at noon. We will see you then. Take care.